In this week's episode, I talk about settings for sports photography. So I was watching back the video I did last week about long exposures in sports photography because I often do. It's not a vanity thing, it's just I like to just see how it looks and compare it to stuff that I've shot before. And it was making me think, anyway, before I get sidetracked, because I'm going to get sidetracked today. And it made me think about the fact that in all the videos I've ever done, I've never really talked about camera settings. Like, I've given a vague idea of camera settings and kind of in the very early days given you an idea of kind of like how I shoot stuff and what modes and things I shoot on, but I'm very careful to never give like really prescriptive settings for cameras for sports, and there's a really good reason for that. And I get that there'll be people who watch my videos in the past who might not know me or kind of might just drop onto the video because they found it in YouTube search and all that kind of stuff, and I get that. And they'll watch it and they'll be like, oh, I really hope this dude tells me how to take this photo or how to shoot a photo like that. And then they go away kind of like disappointed because I haven't given them the settings and all that kind of stuff. There's no real right or wrong, really. Like, I can give you direction and I can say that if you want to shoot sports and freeze action and you're outside and it's a decently lit day, i.e. the sun's out, you really should be about 1,000th of a second-ish. Your ISO as low as you can go. But I can't sit there and say, right, to shoot sports and to shoot this particular sport in this particular way, you need to be at 500th of a second, ISO 200, f3.2. I can't tell you that because that only might be right in one situation. I remember when I first started an awful long time ago and I had a camera in my hand, like I'd read stuff online about like shooting in manual and like try this setting and do this and you should be shooting at this and this, and then you take the photo and it's like super overexposed or it's super underexposed, you don't quite understand why, nothing really makes any sense. And I guess that's kind of the reason why I don't give out camera settings on stuff. It's just because like not every setting's going to work in every situation, and that's fine. And part of being a photographer and part of learning as being a photographer is learning what works and what doesn't work. So like when I got into commercial studio stuff and like athletes and brands and stuff in front of big lights and all that kind of thing, like I worked off of the basis of 1/200th of a second f7.1 ISO 200, and then I worked my lights through that. There was a reason I did that. And the reason I did that is because I was, and still am, a big fan of Joel Grimes, who's an amazing portrait photographer and studio photographer. Like, the stuff he does is amazing. And he always says that's kind of like where he starts, and then that sounded like a great idea for me when I was first kind of really getting into it. But now I understand how it works a lot better. I'm able to shape my light and model my light a lot better, and I'm able to kind of like just tweak those camera settings, but I always start really from that base. And it's the same with sports. So if I'm outside at an event, I will start from a base and I will put those base settings into a custom function, which I always do. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put my custom functions, note to self, put camera functions and settings into the description below, and we'll go from there. So if you are interested in like what my base settings are for my 2 custom functions on 2 cameras, they're in the description below. I start from that base, and that's the base I always start with, but that changes depending on what I want to do. So if I start at 2.8 for stuff and I'm shooting at 2.8, that's great. But if I want more depth of field, then I will increase my depth of field. I'll move up to 7.1 or f9 or even f11 if I want really nice starbursts in a big arena. Like, I can't give you dedicated settings because one, I don't know what camera you're on, I don't know what lenses you're on, I don't know where you're shooting, I don't know what you're shooting, I don't know what the light's like, I don't know what your athletes are like, I don't know whether it's going to come out slightly overexposed or slightly underexposed. What you need to do as a sports photographer is try stuff out, and when you take that picture, like, look on the back of the camera, look at the settings, and if you like it, figure out what it is about those settings that you like. Is it action that's like totally frozen, and it's a triathlete coming out of the water or something, or they're swimming and like all the water droplets are like totally frozen in air, and you look at the settings and go, oh, okay, so that's what happens when you go to 2,000ths of a second, right? It freezes everything. And that's okay, and you learn from that, but you're not going to be able to do that indoors. So you have to kind of adjust for stuff like that, and that's part of being a sports photographer. It's why I don't give you settings, because if I gave you settings, all I would do is get a barrage of comments going, yeah, that doesn't work, yeah, that doesn't work, yeah, that doesn't work. Because I shoot in a certain way, you shoot in another way, and if I give you my camera settings, which I will do anyway, but if you work solely from my camera settings all the time, like, you're always going to be struggling because it won't quite fit the situation you're in. Like, I can go to an arena for, say, netball or something. I could be sat next to someone who's shooting in exactly the same settings as me, and they're going to get very different images come out because they're working in different ways. They've got different cameras, they've got different lenses. Like, it all totally changes. What you need to do as a photographer is learn your settings and learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Like, when I suggest to anybody when they're very, very, very first starting out, not in sports, but like picking a DSLR up, I always say like shoot in P mode for two reasons. One is like, it stops the flash popping up, which sometimes when you're first starting out is really irritating. So like, I always recommend people shoot in P mode, but what that allows you to do is kind of just see what those settings are. Like, it feels like you're not in automatic anymore, and you can kind of look at the settings on the back of the camera and start figuring it out. And then you can move into the other modes. And you haven't got to shoot in manual. That's not the case. Some people can do it, some people can't do it, some people want to do it, some people don't want to do it. I fall into the very latter category of I don't want to shoot in manual. I only shoot in manual for studio because out on an event, my brain doesn't work fast enough. I'm more worried about capturing that, as cheesy as it sounds, capturing that moment as it's happening in front of me, rather than thinking, right, I need to be at 2,000ths of a second, and I need to be at f4, and I need to be at ISO 100, and oh, it's gone. Because that's what happens, and that's how my brain works, and that's fine, and I work with it. So if you're watching my videos in the future and I'm teaching you how to do stuff, or I'm showing you how to do stuff, don't be frustrated that I'm not giving you the perfect settings. Go away and figure out those settings for yourself. Like last week I was talking about the fact that, you know, I was doing pans at 15th of a second and all that kind of stuff, and like, that's hard to do when you first start out. And if you're panning at 100th of a second, great. If it works, it works. You can then figure out how you get slower and all that kind of stuff. So play with your camera settings, take a picture, look at why you like that picture, and then look at the settings that correspond to that image, and then figure out what it is about that image that you like based on those settings, and then work from those settings again the next time you're in a similar position. I'm not going to give you answers, I'm not going to give you definitive, this is how you should shoot it, this is the setting that you should be in, because it doesn't matter. Ultimately, you need to figure it yourself. But if you are interested, I run 2 custom functions on both my main cameras, and I will put the settings in the description below because people are always interested, but it's not gospel, don't follow it, it's just of interest if you're interested in it. Have an awesome week, have an awesome rest of the day. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, hit like, follow me up on Instagram, I always do appreciate that. Had some really good conversations with people, by the way, recently, like followers and subscribers and stuff, so if you're interested in chatting more, feel free to drop me a DM and stuff on Instagram, and have a great rest of the week. See you all very soon, and we'll see you next week.